This is Killer Innovations, a show about ideas, creativity, and how you can innovate. Welcome to the Innovator's Garage, where you learn to create your next game-changing killer innovation.
There's this growing trend of innovation through mergers and acquisition. In fact, over the last 36 months, 57% of all M&A deals were driven by innovation. It is by far the largest rationale of all M&A deals that occurred in the marketplace. So why is innovation through acquisition becoming such a hot area right now? Well, one is in companies that have the financial means to do mergers and acquisitions, they're finding that innovating within their own teams is becoming increasingly more important. And innovation through acquisition gets viewed as kind of being the easiest way to catch up. If you're a large organization and some small startup comes in and takes a big chunk of your market share, you're already behind. And so acquiring a company can be one way in order to really drive a huge amount of innovation value. But there's a downside here. When I've gone back and I've looked at M&A deals that were driven by innovation, and then you look at the organization that acquired the company, that did the acquisition, M&A activities can be a way for an organization to hide a culture of not tolerating failure. I've talked to a lot of innovation organizations, a lot of teams, a lot of individuals, a lot of chief innovation officers, and they're frustrated. The acquisition team goes off and finds this hot startup to go do this, while the innovation team had the exact same idea 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 years before, but couldn't get management to buy onto it. Why? Because in many organizations, they get stuck in this rut where, well, it's really early stage. We don't know if it's going to work. This might fail. It'd be a waste of money. And, we're so really nervous about that. So they say no to it. But then later on, they're willing to do the acquisition to get access to that technology. That's frustrating to the innovation teams. It's frustrating to those individuals who have proposed the original idea to say, why didn't you fund it 3 years ago? We would have been the leaders in the market. And now you're out there acquiring companies and therefore buying that innovation value by acquiring the company. So in some cases, this innovation through acquisition is a way to kind of mask over some cultural issues or a willingness of senior management to support the innovation efforts. Because let's face it, you can easily hide an M&A failure. Go out. There's actually a Wikipedia pages of all the leading companies out there that list all of their M&As, and then they actually list, what's left of it today. How many people the senior management team is still around? How many of those products are still selling? M&As don't have a high return rate. They're not, automatic, big, huge successes. Yeah, they're value additional to the company. They bring customers with. They bring some expertise with. But it's not like M&A is a guaranteed success. So you can actually hide an M&A failure. Everybody gets all excited about the acquisition. You have instant access to this innovation. But over time, you can hide and plaster over and obfuscate any negative issues that occur during the acquisition. At the same time, it's hard to hide an innovation project inside of an organization that has failed. It's very hard to hide that. So who does this? Who does these acquisitions, right? In many cases, it's not the innovation team. It is not the chief innovation officer. And in fact, what's really interesting is if you look across all mergers and acquisition deals in the marketplace today, only 32% in a recent survey was sourced from employees. So even the acquisition targets typically are coming from investment bankers, coming from advisors outside the company. maybe coming from the board, but that tends to be only about 12 or 13%. Only 32% of M&A deals are sourced by the employees. That means 68% comes from outside of the organization in some way. So who gets those deals? Well, it's the mergers and acquisition teams who get this from an investment banker, from a board member, from an outside advisor saying, hey, so-and-so is on the market. Someone's got this really hot technology. You ought to acquire it. So is the M&A team best equipped to do these M&A kinds of deals? Now, if you ask most mergers and acquisition execs, they are predicting that this trend of innovation through M&A is going to absolutely explode. However, only 20% of these M&A teams think that they're equipped to take this on. They recognize that they need a whole new set of tools, a whole new set of analytics, a whole new set of methodologies to evaluate everything from what is the innovation value, not just the business value. Is it CRETA? Is it going to deliver positive revenue? Is it going to expand the channels? All the normal M&A things, that's great. But if you're acquiring innovation through M&A, meaning you are strategically saying we are going to innovate by mergers and acquisition, your M&A teams need to be equipped to understand what that innovation value is. And in your case, if you're an innovator inside your organization, if you're a chief innovation officer, if you're running an innovation team, you need to play a part in those M&A activities. Not sit on the sidelines and wring your hands and say, whoa, we should do this, we should build internally. Provide strategic value and help those M&A teams get equipped, because it is a trend that is in the early stages, but it is going to be a rocket ship. More and more innovations in large organizations is going to come in through this acquisition process. Now, as we talked about it, only 20% of M&A teams think that they're equipped to take on this explosion of innovation activities that is driving M&A. In the same survey, 86% of M&A teams haven't changed how they plan and execute deals. So this is a little strange. Let's go back through these numbers. I want to make sure you get this. 57% of today's M&A deals are driven by innovation. That is the sole motivation. 57%. It is by far the largest reason for M&A deals occurring in today's market. Yet only 20% of M&A teams feel that they're equipped to take this on. So it's more than half of all deals, but only 20% of M&A teams are ready to take this on. And at the same time, 86% of all the M&A teams haven't changed their process. So they're trying to use the traditional, model of looking at and determining value of a business M&A activity and trying to apply that to how you think about innovation. So what we're going to talk about today is I'm going to share with you some more of my perspectives. I've lived on both sides of this equation. I've been on the side of acquiring companies. I've been on the side of being acquired into large organizations because people wanted the innovation value that we had created. And I'm going to share with you later in the show a couple of steps, really a process that I use when I'm doing innovation M&A that you should share within your organization. So if you're a chief innovation officer, if you're running an innovation team, I'm going to give you a process that has worked very well for me. You can use that inside your organization and therefore actually help position you to be that innovation leader. So you're not going to want to miss the rest of the show, so stay tuned. We're going to cover all of that. Along with, we're going to get into talking about kind of what I think are the effective strategies. When you had to boil it all down, what are some fundamental effective strategies for innovation through mergers and acquisition? So stay right there. We're going to be back right after this quick, short commercial break. You're listening to Killer Innovations on the BizTalk Radio Network. And go check out BizTalk. Go over to BizTalk and check out all the other shows that are out there that can help you grow your business, establish your strategies, and be more effective in the businesses you're trying to be in. So stay right there. We'll be right back after this quick commercial break.
This is Killer Innovations, a show about ideas, creativity, and how you can innovate. Welcome to the Innovator's Garage, where you learn to create your next game-changing killer innovation.
The question on M&A in the role of innovation is if an organization does an innovation through mergers and acquisition, does it have a significant impact on the internal R&D efforts? It actually is significant. There's a significant negative impact on internal and external R&D and innovation efforts. Now, in fact, it's more significant on external R&D efforts. External R&D efforts are things where you're funding an R&D project at an outside party or working with an outside party, what I sometimes refer to as co-innovation efforts. So a recent study shows that, in fact, yes, innovation is negatively impacted with your organization when you also have a strategy of innovation by acquisition. Now, that's not surprising, right? It's, R&D may be working in one area and the organization decides to go off and acquire a company rather than continuing to fund that. But it's more subtle than that. It isn't about a one-to-one project match. It's really around the fact that organizations will, in effect, generally do some kind of a pullback on just general R&D spend. It is this effect of innovation and R&D being demotivated through this process of acquiring innovation, having a strategy go out and drive your innovation agenda through acquisition. So how do you, what is it you can do around that? Well, if you're an innovation leader, if you're leading your organization team, it is about aligning your innovation work with the M&A strategy. We're going to talk about that a little bit later when I talk through kind of how I have done these kinds of innovation through mergers and acquisition, both in the role of actually driving the acquisition, but also being acquired on the other side of the table, or being the person driving innovation teams that have to coordinate with the M&A or the mergers and acquisition activities. So the question now also is, okay, if you're in a company and your leadership team has come down with this strategy that says we're going to innovate by acquisition, meaning we're not going to do certain areas. We will, rather than doing internal R&D, we will go into the market and buy that innovation from companies, either startups or could be large established companies. We are going to go out and acquire those innovations. So if you've got an organization that's done that, the next question you've got is, well, what do competitors do? Well, particularly if you're a market leader, how does your competitors react? Now, you would naturally assume in the competitive marketplace that a competitor would generally pull back. It would cause them to pause. It would say, hold on. If they're abandoning their internal innovation to go do innovation by acquisition, it may not be a total abandonment, but that's how it gets perceived in the competitor's, mindset. You would generally assume that the competitors would pull back, that they, in effect, would follow the other person in the marketplace and shift to an innovation by acquisition, and that there would just be this general slowdown, less investment, less rigor, slower pace amount of internal and external R&D efforts. So if company A goes off and says, we're going to do innovation by acquisition, competitor B, you would generally think they're going to slow down, that they're going to maybe shift to a similar strategy. They're going to just see a general slowdown. And in fact, this sometimes does happen in organizations of what I refer to extreme benchmarking, where the CEOs or the senior executives within an organization are so focused on doing competitive benchmarking of company A to company B. If you're company B, the CEOs or the leaders within the organization are trying to or try to use this extreme benchmarking to see whether or not you're more efficient, more effective, more productive. And this can have a disastrous effect. I lived through this. This can have a disastrous effect on your innovation efforts. So again, company A makes a shift. They're going to go with an innovation by acquisition strategy. What do the competitors do? You would think they would slow down. However, the opposite is true. When you go through and you do the analysis and you look at competitors in markets where a leader or a significant player in the market has shifted to an innovation by acquisition, the competitor typically doubles down. They use the inertia of a company, of their competitor going in and doing innovation by acquisition to actually broaden their R&D, to invest more. They tend to want to go over and actually speed up their innovation pace. The fact that somebody stepped out and just bought an innovation value actually spurs competitors to pick up the pace, invest more, drive the innovation agenda. Now, while the primary company tends to slow down in the pace because you do the acquisition, you've got it, you bring it in-house, you've kind of wrapped up the deal. The competitors are actually continuing to make that innovation investment. So this is a little bit of counterintuitive when organizations are thinking about going with an innovation by acquisition. They think of it as, I can catch up, I'm maybe behind, I can acquire this great asset, I can bring it in, and then the end result is I can beat my competitors, but what happens is your competitors will actually double down, increase their investment, and increase their pace. And there's a number of studies out there that prove this out. I mean, one example is just look at virtual reality today in the marketplace. When Facebook acquired Oculus Rift, everybody kind of assumed, wow, Facebook is going to be the lead. They bought this. They paid billions of dollars. Everybody else is cooked. What happened in the marketplace? You saw an explosion of startup companies. You saw an explosion of innovation investments coming from large organizations, whether that be Microsoft and HoloLens or go through the entire list. So the strategy of saying, I'm going to jump to be the leader in the pack and crush everybody out by simply doing this acquisition actually has a motivating effect on your competitors. So it's counterintuitive. So that is one of the ramifications of an innovation by acquisition strategy. Now, innovation by acquisition is not a negative thing. I don't want you to walk away thinking that I'm against it. It has its role, but it has its role in being done the right way. And that's what we're going to talk about right after this break.
This is Killer Innovations, a show about ideas, creativity, and how you can innovate. Welcome to the Innovator's Garage, where you learn to create your next game-changing killer innovation.
I want to acknowledge our sponsor this week. This episode of Killer Innovations is brought to you by Zoom. Zoom delivers flawless video, clear audio, and instant sharing so that your teams can work better together, no matter where your team members are. How do I know this? I've been using Zoom personally every day for more than a year to collaborate with my team who's scattered around the world. And it's the first video collaboration tool that I've ever used that doesn't suck. It's not just me who thinks so. Gartner recently named Zoom a new leader in its Magic Quadrant for web conferencing this year. Give it a try with a free account that allows you to meet with up to 50 video participants. Visit killerinnovations.com/Zoom to find out more. As we were talking about M&A and innovation through the M&A activities, I've gone through this experience. I've been on both sides of the table. I've acquired companies, and I've been the one that was acquired. And I've come up with kind of a 6 steps or 6 elements in a strategy if you're going to do innovation through M&A. Or if you're an innovation leader, you should prepare your strategy around M&A and present that to your senior management team. They will be shocked that you're going to present this, and it positions you to have much broader strategic value within the organizations you serve. So, what are these 6 elements of a strategy or a process to do innovation by mergers and acquisitions? Number 1, and it would seem so obvious, which is define your strategy around innovation and mergers and acquisition. You need to have it be aligned with both the corporate objectives and the innovation objectives. The key here is be deliberate, not reactive. A lot of M&A that has an innovation focus is very opportunistic. Something falls in the lap, some company gets into a financial trouble, and you can swoop in and take over assets. Oh my gosh, the market got really hot. Everybody's in there competing and driving up prices in a certain segment because everybody wants a position in it. Drive and create a strategy well before these opportunities land in your lap. Create a strategy that aligns your corporate objectives and your innovation objectives. And I would say that probably less than 1% of all companies that do innovation by acquisition have a well-defined strategy. Number 2, develop options. Options is understanding and develop how you would structure deals. Think through the scenarios. How could you be creative in funding this activity? How do you finance it? How do you keep the teams? How do you keep the value, not lose the value, right? A lot of M&As come in with high expectations of synergy value and overall value contribution, and most never really live through that. So think about all those variety of options up front. Come up with your scenarios such that when you get a deal or your organization gets a deal, you know which option to play that out. Number 3, deal evaluation. Come up with an approach on how to evaluate an innovation by acquisition deal. It's different. You got the normal due diligence, intellectual properties and trademarks and, customer base and revenue flows and audits and all those kinds of things. But it's different for innovation deals. How do you value an innovation deal? We see these small companies pre-revenue getting $3 billion offers. And you're sitting here going, oh my gosh, how in the heck? Someone's just way overpaying that. There is actually strategies on how to do and drive these values. We don't have time to go through it in today's show, but think through that because it's different. It's not about, an EBITDA multiple like you would do maybe a traditional business acquisition deal. You have to think differently. You have to have a different set of due diligence You have to have a different strategy around how to take advantage of that innovation and bring it into your overall organization. So again, deal evaluation, critically important, and you want to think about that ahead of time. Otherwise, your typical M&A activities will try to price that deal or evaluate whether or not you should do the deal based on traditional business terms. Number 4, negotiate and closing the deal. You have to determine the price. You have to determine the value. You have to negotiate. You have to think about employee retention. Absolutely critical, and one area that is highly overlooked in most mergers and acquisition deals. Now, I've done deals where I've acquired companies where I've put in earnouts, meaning I think the company is valued at A. The people I'm acquiring thinks that their company is at the value of B. I'll negotiate that says, okay, I'll pay you A plus some premium, and you stay and run this business. And if it achieves what you think you can achieve, I'll give you B. And guess what? If you blow it out of the water and you make it 2 times that value, I'll pay you 2 times the value for the acquisition. So you get an earnout with an incentive. So people stay, they stay committed, they stay invested, they have a huge amount of value invested, meaning they're going to get a huge payout if they can drive that activity and make it a long-term success. So earnouts, I find I'm very big on those. They've worked very well for me. I've had entrepreneurs make some pretty big earnouts on acquisition deals that I've done, and I've been more than happy to write those big checks because the overall value that brings in as part of those acquisitions is huge. The other is you can do the normal bonus structures, of earning out for people to stay. The key with employee retention is you don't want all that intellectual property to leave. You're not buying code. You're not just buying, the product or the service or that. You're buying what's in everybody's head. And the only way you retain that value is to retain the employees. So bonus tends to work okay, but not great. I've seen some companies go into and spend more time on negotiating the non-compete clause after an acquisition than actually negotiating the deal. And that is just a wasteful amount of energy. You want people to want to stay, not stay because they have a handcuff. You don't want people to feel cheated or mistreated because if they leave, they can't even work in the space or the technologies or the areas that their expertise is in. So negotiating and closing is part of that. Employee retention. I think you also have to think about the 100-day plan. I'm big on a 100-day plan. So plan out what's going to happen in the first 100 days. Think about day one operation. Day one operation means the integration is done. And what's that plan for day one? Sales, marketing, all those kinds of things. Number 5, integration. Actually planning out, bringing the organization in and integrating in. Here's the thing that I got my biggest surprise on one deal I did, which was the cost of integration. Very, very small company, kind of in the less than $3 million, less than $4 million total acquisition cost, coming into a very large organization. In the integration planning, the IT team had to estimate how much it was going to take to integrate them into the IT systems. It was more than the total acquisition deal. That's right. I acquired a company for like a little north of $3 million, $4 million. The IT integration cost, the changes that were going to be required in the IT organization to bring this organization in was more than the total acquisition cost. I just about lost it. And that just proves that even in large organizations, in the M&A activities, they have a hard time downscaling to take in and bring in just these small companies. And then number 6, implementation. You have to make it real. You have to define the key performance indicators. How do you know in the end that all that work up front on that acquisition is going to work out? So number 1, define your M&A and innovation strategy. Number 2, come up with your options. Number 3, Figure out a way to do your deal evaluations. Number 4, you have to negotiate and close the deal. Number 5, integration. How do you do the integration planning? How do you bring this new acquisition in and make it effective? And number 6, the actual implementation, making it real and tracking that performance. So, stay right there. We're going to be right back. Then we're going to talk about what are the most effective strategies for innovation by acquisition. So we talked about the process. Now I want to talk about the strategies. So we'll be right back, right here on Killer Innovations.
This is Killer Innovations, a show about ideas, creativity, and how you can innovate. Welcome to the Innovator's Garage, where you learn to create your next game-changing killer innovation.
As I've shared, I've been through a lot of innovation by acquisition processes, both in the role of acquiring innovations that bring into an organization or being at a company that got acquired. And over those years, I've kind of seen the ups and the downs, the pluses and the minuses, what works and what doesn't work. And so what I want to share with you now is what I think are the most effective strategies for innovation by acquisition. What are the key things that an organization, if they have this in place, is going to have a much higher likelihood of success? I'm just boiling it down to 3. One is they have a clear roadmap. They have clarity of the objectives within the organization. They have a defined product plan that is flexible in the form of being able to take in an acquisition and get full value out of it. The opposite of that is what I would refer to as not invented here. They have a roadmap, but any outside disturbance in that roadmap is totally rejected. So a defined product plan, product roadmap, whether that's product or service, that is flexible. And they have go-to-market plans that can accommodate an innovation by acquisition. So it's not just that you have a product roadmap, but you also have a go-to-market. You've built in flexibility within your organization that should an acquisition come in, that should an innovation by acquisition come in, that your go-to-market plans can accommodate. So again, number 1, clear roadmap. That is absolutely the number 1. Ones where I've seen it failed is they have no roadmap, they have no plan. They get enamored with the new shiny object. They go off and acquire it and say, well, we'll just figure it out. And then in the inside of the organization just totally rejects it. The antibodies come out in swarms and totally kills it. So again, number 1, a clear roadmap. Number 2, it's strategic integration. It's not just acquiring and integrating it and, having it okay, that company now reports to that senior vice president, and it just looks like a plug-in into the organization. Strategic integration, you're thinking through all of those issues of team retention and what's the culture of that organization that you're acquiring and the culture of your organization, and how are you going to bring that culture mix together? The number 1 failure point that I've seen for acquisitions, and I've been involved in ones that are into the tens of billions of dollars of acquisition to, $2, $3, $4 million and everything in between. The number 1 reason that I've seen acquisitions totally come off the rails and crash and burn is a culture mismatch. The acquiring company has one culture, the company being acquired is a different culture, and boy, that is like oil and water. So when you're thinking about the strategic integration, really thinking hard about that integration piece, thinking about how the cultures are going to mesh is absolutely critical. The other is part of this strategic integration is looking at it from the standpoint of long-term strategic vision. Am I doing this acquisition purely for a quick hit, or does it have this long-term strategic value? Is it something that's going to be valued 2, 3, 4, 5 years from now? Those are the right deals. Ones that are just trying to make the quick hit and it's very opportunistic, very, very low success rate. And I've been on both sides of the failures on those. Someone's trying to do an acquisition, or I did an acquisition that was really more opportunistic. Never works out. Never works out. Number 3 is ownership by the sponsors. The person who wants to do the deal needs to have the ownership. It needs to be someone in the organization that can get things done, but who is absolutely all chips in, fully committed to making this deal work. In the deals that I've been involved in where I was the sponsor and I was highly committed, high success. I've been involved in deals where it wasn't really me who initiated it. It was somebody else in the organization that initiated it, but everybody thought it would be best if it landed in my lap. Didn't work out as well. You're at the back end of the deal's already been defined, you're being brought in at the integration phase. Never works. Ownership and sponsorship, absolutely critical. Let me go through this list again. Number 1, clear roadmap. Organizations that have a clear roadmap. They have the clarity of their objectives. They have a defined product plan that's flexible. They have a go-to-market plan that is flexible. But they think strategically around that roadmap and then understand how innovation by acquisition can actually help fill in that roadmap versus just kind of being this thing that kind of lands in everybody's lap. So number 1, clear roadmap. Number 2, strategic integration. Think about integration as strategically important to the organization. So how do you retain the team? How do you integrate the cultures? How do you align this with the long-term strategic vision of the organization? Does it align? Think long and hard. Strategic integration. And number 3, ownership by the sponsors. Strong ownership by the sponsors has an exponential effect on improving the value that you retain and get out of an acquisition. Any acquisition, but especially innovation by acquisition. So again, I hope that's helpful for you. Again, this is lessons learned. I've got the scars to show for it of being on both sides. And many of them are high profile, and I don't talk specifically on the work out of my past, but pretty easy to do a Google search, and you can quickly figure out the ones that I did that worked out really well and the ones that were just like total face plants into the dirt, total busts. Would never do those again. So again, innovation from mergers and acquisition, it's an exploding area. You need to get involved in it if you're in the innovation game. Particularly if you own or lead innovation teams within your organization, you need to find a way to embrace and take advantage of innovation by acquisition. When it's done right, it can be huge value, but it is very rarely done right. And hopefully this show gives you some perspective and context, and you can apply this to what you're doing every day. So with that, we're going to wrap up today's show. Thank you for listening. If I could ask one favor, hop over to iTunes, give us a rating. That helps a lot in, 1, giving us feedback, but 2, also letting others know about the Killer Innovation Show. We are here each and every Sunday on the Biz Talk Radio Network on 35 stations across the country, and we'll talk to you next week. Bye-bye.
Autism. 1 out of every 68 children in America are impacted across every race, ethnicity, and socioeconomic group. If you aren't directly affected, someone you know is. Today's world doesn't support those on the autism spectrum. It needs hacking for us to truly welcome those who think and create differently than ourselves. We're Hacking Autism, a nonprofit charity with a mission to hack therapy, technologies, and career opportunities that improve the personal and professional lives of people on the autism spectrum. We believe that everyone can play a role in supporting those on the autism spectrum so that they can show their unique talents and abilities in this fast-paced world. You aren't powerless in this fight. Use your gifts and talents to make a positive impact. Join us in making a difference. Go to hackingautism.org to learn more.
Carpenters have their hammers and saws, chefs have their outfitted kitchens, and musicians have their instruments. A craftsman's ability to do their job is dependent on having the right tools. So where does an innovator, someone who takes an idea and makes it real, find the right tools to do their job? Outfit your innovator's garage by visiting innovation.tools. Innovation.tools is an online store created by innovators for innovators. It's where you will find tested and proven tools to help you create that next great product or service. These tools include books, audio training, video training, brainstorming how-tos, and much, much more. And for a limited time, listeners of Killer Innovations will get 25% off on your first order by using the discount code RADIO at checkout. And 100% of our profits from your purchases will be donated to charity. So go to innovation.tools and create that next great innovation.
Rwanda is a shining example of how the global community can come together and rebuild a country after a devastating genocide. But there is still more that needs to be done. In the rural villages, students are crowded into schools with no electricity, no running water, no internet access, and limited sanitation. Will these kids be ready to continue the rebuilding of Rwanda, or will they be dependent upon others? Through education and employment, boys and girls have an equally promising future that can transform their struggling communities. For $20 a month, a child can be educated and a community strengthened. By supporting Pioneer Education Africa, a 501c3 charity, you partner with others to provide education that will prepare a generation to take on the task of self-reliance. 100% of the proceeds received go directly to the education of the children. Visit pioneereducationafrica.com to find out more.